Fitzroy McLean, who went on to become a partisan fighter with Tito in Yugoslavia and a famous author, was an early SAS recruit. He recalled, "For days and nights on end, we trudged interminably over the alternating soft sand and jagged rocks of the desert, weighed down by heavy loads of explosives, eating and drinking only what we could carry with us. We did weapons training, physical training, and training in demolitions and navigation. These grueling expeditions became known as Lewis Marches. They increased the fitness of the SAS recruits to an unprecedented level. Many troopers would not have survived the missions without this intense training." At the outset, the SAS decided that parachuting was the best way to reach their targets. Lewis miraculously purloined a number of parachutes that were destined for the British Army in India. He immediately started a parachute training course, even though he himself had only jumped once before. The RAF provided Bristol Bombay aircraft as transport to drop the SAS teams. Lewis played a leading role in the creation of the SAS and the reputation it was to forge in the war. Despite some serious casualties, those who passed the course were presented with wings that Lewis designed. The SAS adopted as its insignia a winged dagger. And the motto, "Who dares wins," was devised by Stirling himself. Now it was time to put the SAS to the test. The first SAS raid was planned for November 1941 to support Operation Crusader. General Erwin Rommel's forces had trapped British troops in Tobruk. Operation Crusader was the 8th Army's major offensive to relieve those troops. For 8 months, the garrison had been under siege by the Germans and Italians. As Operation Crusader began, Stirling planned to attack 5 airfields near Tmimi and Gazala as a diversionary raid. But high winds dispersed the SAS paratroopers over a wide area, and most are captured. Of the 62 men who set out on the mission, only 22, including Stirling, returned unscathed. They were evacuated by LRDG vehicles. After this complete failure, Stirling feared that the SAS would be unceremoniously disbanded. However, a few days after the raid, Stirling met with legendary desert raider Captain David Lloyd Owen of the LRDG. Instead of parachutes, Stirling suggested the LRDG transport SAS raiders to and from their targets. During a 2-week period in December 1941, Captain Paddy Mayne led the SAS to destroy 88 Axis aircraft on the ground. Mayne, an Irish international rugby player and renowned boxer, led many SAS assaults. His exploits were legendary. In this particular raid, he used the Lewis bombs invented by Jock Lewis. Every SAS raider carried up to 10 of these incendiary bombs. They were highly effective. On another raid, Mayne ran out of Lewis bombs, so he disabled one aircraft by brute strength alone. He simply pulled out the instrument panel with his bare hands. On December 31st, 1941, Jock Lewis was killed when his vehicle was attacked by German aircraft as he returned from a raid. It was a tragic loss to the SAS. By 1942, the LRDG had expanded and maintained almost constant patrols in the field to provide valuable tactical intelligence about the enemy. They developed a system known as Roadwatch. This involved covert surveillance of the enemy's principal supply routes, often from as close as 100 yards. Meticulous records were kept of the number and types of vehicles and their loads that were moving in each direction. If the patrols noticed armored vehicles and gasoline tankers moving toward the front lines, they warned the Eighth Army of a possible attack. This intelligence had to be sent to HQ Middle East as quickly as possible. From behind enemy lines, skilled radio operators transmitted the vital information over vast distances to the frontline units. Although often tedious, uncomfortable, and dangerous, the Roadwatch was an invaluable source of information to the High Command. Many Allied lives were saved by the exploits of the LRDG during the long North African campaign. In early 1942, the LRDG and the SAS mount a combined operation codenamed Green Room. It involves repeated attacks against Axis airfields, from which fighter and bomber aircraft mount strikes on supply convoys sailing to the British-held island of Malta. To the LRDG, these raids were known as beat-ups and were a welcome change from the usual roadwatch duties. In addition to destroying numerous aircraft, the LRDG also knocked out several Italian M13 tanks and trucks. By now, the activities of the LRDG and the SAS raiders are of serious concern to the German High Command. But the Germans have no answer to the Desert Raiders. In the spring of 1942, Rommel was planning another major offensive against the British, but he needed the latest intelligence on the strength and dispositions of the Eighth Army. He sent a message to Berlin requesting his own version of the long-range desert group. In response, the Abwehr, the German intelligence service, created the Afrika Kompanie of the Brandenburg Regiment, one of the elite German Special Forces units. Codenamed Operation Salam, its mission was to infiltrate German spies into the Egyptian capital of Cairo to gather military intelligence. During the month of May, the Afrika Kompanie struggled across the desert of Libya and Egypt. They suffered illness and mechanical breakdowns, but eventually